Asset one, who do I know? 1, calculating the value of who you know. 2, the Black Book Connection self-test. 3, how I learned to connect and how I made connections. 4, your present asset base, your human capital. 5, Billy, do your homework, connection homework. Calculating the value of who you know. Think of all the people you've met during your lifetime. Thousands. You've spent your whole life connecting. Now's the time to harness the power of your personal network so you can profit from it and expand on it. This is a book of actionable items, not a lecture on the obvious. Speaking of the obvious, Sparky, if you have thousands of connections, how come you only have a handful of email addresses? The easiest way to compile a list of who you know is to create the list by group: friends, business friends, customers, coworkers, important people you may know casually, people on your Christmas card list, relatives, members from groups you belong to, and people you'd like to connect with. Once you've gathered your list of groups, call everyone you can and get their email addresses. Find out what their biggest needs are for this year and begin to think of ways that you can communicate answers to those needs. The good news is, groups tend to need the same thing. One message to many is the way to go. Keep asking for input and keep giving valuable information. Before you know it, your list will grow just by one reader referring another. Start small, get valuable, build your list, build wealth. It all fits. It all connects. This is how I learned to connect and how I made connections. When I started connecting, there was no book to read on the subject other than How to Win Friends and Influence People by the late, great Dale Carnegie. I read it. I devoured it. I even took the Dale Carnegie course back in the 70s. But my primary teacher was by fire. I learned by doing and talking. Let me give you some examples of connections that I've made. These are stories that describe methods that I used, and you can use the same methods the minute you're listening to them. When I wanted to connect with a book publisher, I went to the bookstore, looked inside the best-selling books, and read the acknowledgments of the author. It always included the name of the senior editor, also known as the decision maker, and I began to make connections from there. One day, my book agent, my literary agent, made me go to a lunch with another author named Richard Brody. Richard is not only the author of several books, he's also the author of Microsoft Word 1.0. One of the most brilliant and likable people I have ever met. Had it not been for a third-party introduction, we would have never connected. When I was in my early 20s, I went to a rock concert in a movie theater. I turned to my then spouse and said, I can do this. This is simple. All you got to do is buy an act, rent a theater, and figure out the details. I won't have to sell the tickets. If I buy the right act, fans will clamor for them. When I went to New York City and visited several talent agencies, I found out one of the touring groups was Electric Light Orchestra, ELO, who coincidentally was my favorite rock band of all time. When the band got off the plane to do my event, I didn't know whether to shake hands or touch them. Jeff Lynne and the rest of the group immediately became my friends. It was a case of both making a connection and being able to connect with people that I admired. In 1976, my two partners and I had an imprinted sportswear company that was growing by leaps and bounds. We needed an investor, and somehow we were introduced to a guy named Earl Pertnoy. After several negotiations, we agreed that Earl would buy in at 25% and the other three of us would be equal partners, 25, 25, 25. On the flight back from Miami to Orlando, one of my partners declared he wanted 26% so that he and anybody else could make a majority. When we got home, I called Earl and told him what had happened and advised him not to invest. 1 month later, I sold my interest in the business to my two partners. But Earl and I remain friends. He's been my mentor for more than 30 years. Here's a footnote. I've never approached Earl with any investment ideas or opportunities since that day. His mentorship and his wisdom are far too valuable for me to think of him in terms of money. Glenn Turner is also my sales hero, guru, and attitude champion all in one. In 1972, through his tapes, movies, and books, Glenn Turner taught me how to sell and the principles of achieving and maintaining a positive mental attitude. Yes, there were others. Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, Earl Nightingale, Bill Gove, and J. Douglas Edwards, to name a few, but none like Glenn. I'd never met him. I'd only heard his tapes and watched his movies until April 1995, 23 years after I took his first lessons. What a rush. When we met, I shared the closing line from one of his favorite stories, and I did it with a hair-lip speech impediment just like he would have done it. He smiled and hugged me, and we've been hugging ever since. Connections are a result of a combination of factors. Number one is being open to receive the connection. Number two, being in the right place at the right time. Three, being prepared to make the connection if you happen to be there. Four, using your existing connections to make new connections. And 4.5, being able to connect back or return the connection. Here's a repeated secret. One connection will breed another if, in fact, you can help the person that you've connected with in some way. Help them, and they will be inclined, if not compelled, to help you. Your present asset base, your human capital. As you're looking to connect, it's important that your connections be segmented into three categories. One, those you already have. Define who they are, define what they've done for you, define what you have done for them, and define how you intend to keep them. Number two, those you need to have next. Define who they are, define what you want from them, define what you can do to attract them, and define how you intend to connect with them. And three, those I hope to have in the future. Define who they are. Define what you want from them. Define what you can do to attract them. Define how you intend to get in front of them. And define how you intend to connect with them once you are in front of them. It's most likely that you have some form of contact database at the moment. But what you don't have is, number one, a clear vision or definition of what those contacts mean to you or can do for you, and two, a value-based game plan to connect and get what you want from them. And of course, there's a point five. One is what they mean to you, two is what they can do for you, and 2.5 is what you can do for them. Guess which one's the most powerful, and guess which one is the least powerful. Rule one of the more the more. The more you do for them, the more they will do for you. The more you do for them, the more you will mean to them, and the more importance you will have in their lives, and of course, vice versa. In my experience, I've found that I get more pleasure out of doing for my connections than I do from them doing for me. So, to complete your asset inventory, each contact must be fully defined with an emphasized place on what you can do for them. Here's a major clue. What you can do for them means nothing unless you take some action to follow through and do it. Here's my recommendation. Take your top 10 contacts and put one action item next to each name with a game plan to complete it within 30 days. If you do 10 things per month, you will have given value 120 times in the course of 1 year. That's enough karma headed in your direction with a stiff breeze behind it. Connection exercise. Make a present inventory of your top 10 existing connections, the ones that are most valuable to you. They probably represent a large portion of your present human capital asset base. Define who they are, what they mean to you, define what they have done for you, define how you are connected with them or how you intend to stay connected with them each week, how you stay in front of them, and then define what you're going to do for them, how you will give value to them. This is the defining connection piece. Here's rule 2 of the more the more. The more you provide them with value, the more they are willing to provide value back to you, and the more willing they are or they will be to take your call and meet with you. The universal truth of connecting. Your mother taught you everything you need to know about connecting before you were 10 years old. Make friends, play nice, tell the truth, take a bath, do your homework. Billy, do your homework. Connection homework. Can you hear the words of your mother ringing in your ears? She wasn't just telling you to do your schoolwork. She was helping you prepare the self-discipline for life's work. Suppose I told you that tomorrow you had to connect with the 5 people on your wish list that would help advance your career or your life. How ready would you be to connect with them? I didn't say how eager. I said how ready. Most people try to make connections before they're prepared. In sales, for example, the second most coveted prize besides a sale is a referral. If somebody gives you a referral, your anxiousness to make the connection will often ruin the opportunity that the referral presents to you. You call them too soon. Introduce yourself, reference your mutual friend, beg for an appointment. The referral responds, thanks, but I'm not interested. And the opportunity is gone. If you would have used your brains instead of your wallet for thinking, you would have asked your friend to set up a 3-way lunch or a breakfast where you, your connection, and his connection could sit down and meet in a safe environment. This way, you have your best opportunity to engage and make a connection at the same time you're with the person who can affirm that what you're saying is both true and valid. A much more compelling environment, one that will most likely breed a successful outcome. The idiocy of connections is that most people try to make them on their own when in fact somebody else could not only make them for you, but could make them in a way that would almost guarantee a successful outcome. Hello? How many times have you tried to make a connection and got turned down? Now, I'm not just talking about business. This started in the 4th grade when you asked somebody to come out and play with you, or you asked Mary to the dance at your grade school social. Rejection is part of life. It's the crappy part. I can remember in high school when there were 2 YMCA clubs for the boys, the Rebels and the Vikings. The Rebels were mostly jocks. The Vikings were mostly intellectuals. I was a Viking. We had our jackets. Mine was red with white sleeves and had a big black V on it. I wore it with pride. And all the people in my group were my friends. One day when we were juniors in high school, we were voting on the acceptance of a new member, my friend, Kenny Artis. All kinds of interesting discussions ensued, and Kenny was not your regular kind of guy. Editor of the school newspaper, somewhat of a loner, extremely intelligent with an offbeat sense of humor. In the early 60s, offbeat often meant weird. They voted him down. I stood up and quit, asking everyone in what was my first official speech, now that I think about it, who the hell they thought they were to vote down somebody just because they didn't like him or had some prejudice against him. I talked about Ken for 3 or 4 minutes, my experience with him, how I benefited from his friendship, and I asked the group to reconsider. He was voted in unanimously. Kenny and I were friends then. We're friends now, 45 years later. Here's the connection exercise. Actually, your connection homework. Pick 5 people you want to connect with and, using your existing base of friends and connections, arrange a meeting or a phone call. This is an exercise, one of several, to help you move in the direction of success by making connections. It's also a report card on how powerful and how effective your present connection base is or isn't. The exercise should take about 10 minutes per call. And, of course, the way you make the call will determine its outcome. You can't just make the call. You have to prepare to make the call. In sales, it's called pre-call preparation. In high school, it was called homework. If you have to make a connection, the best and most powerful way is to connect through others. I've given you the philosophy. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. When they don't know you, the next most powerful philosophy is, if you don't know them, figure out who does know them. In other words, do your homework.